Welcome to Twilight Terror Stories. Twilight is not just the end of day, it's the beginning of something else. A time when the shadows stretch and fear takes its first breath. You've stepped into that moment now, and the stories are waiting. Let them find you. "12 sepulchral strokes from the pendulum clock in the foyer pulsed through the echoing expanse of Penhallow Manor. I stilled my hand above the ledger, gooseflesh prickling my arms despite the study's banked fire. Midnight, the hour between the dog and the wolf, my grandmother whispered in memory, when the seams of the world frayed thin. A foolish tremor. I dismissed it, a mental flick against superstition. My purpose here was clear, defined. The newly appointed custodian of the Penhallow legacy, tasked with imposing order upon the chaotic strata of artifacts accumulated by generations of that singular, enigmatic family. The work, though demanding, held a strange allure. Each object, vellum-bound grimoires smelling of dust and ozone, tribal effigies whose vacant sockets seemed to track my movements, intricate automata of baffling function, hummed with unspoken narratives, hinting at journeys and enigmas far beyond my ken. Yet, it was the portals that ensnared my imagination. 13 doorways, punctuating the manor's labyrinthine layout. Every one distinct, lavishly wrought, etched with symbols and vistas that shimmered, refusing to hold a single form under scrutiny. And each, unyieldingly, locked fast. Naturally, I had inquired upon my arrival. The family solicitor, a dry reed of a man named Alistair Finch, offered only clipped obfuscation. Heirlooms, of a specific nature, he'd stated, his tone a dead end. They need not occupy your attention. Confine your cataloging efforts to the accessible chambers. But curiosity is a persistent vine. In the 3 weeks since settling into Penhallow Manor, I'd tested every key on the clattering ring entrusted to me, hunted for concealed latches, even resurrected a dubious skill in lock persuasion learned in less reputable days. Futile. The doors remained impervious, silent sentinels to their secrets. Until this night. As the clock's final resonance dissolved into the profound quiet, a sound surfaced. A click, subtle as a settling bone. Then another, and another. 13 distinct articulations, one cascading after the other through the manor's stilled heart. My pulse leaped. Snatching the nearest oil lamp, its flame casting frantic shadows, I ventured into the corridor. The very air felt altered, thrumming with a latent, inexplicable tension. I approached the closest of the 13 portals, a colossal slab of oak, carved with sinuous vines bearing blossoms that seemed to writhe in an unseen current. With fingers that betrayed my sudden tremor, I reached, turned the ornate handle. Effortlessly, it yielded. The door swung inward on a sighing creak. Beyond threshold lay not the anticipated gloom of a forgotten storeroom, but sheer impossibility. A sprawling garden bathed in the silver luminescence of a colossal moon. Flowers unknown to any earthly botany unfurled in ecstatic profusion, their petals aglow with an ethereal phosphorescence. The air hung heavy, thick as syrup with their intoxicating, alien perfume. I stepped across, reality reeling. This space defied the manor's architecture, no garden of this magnitude could physically exist within these walls. Yet, the cool, damp blades of grass yielded beneath my boots. The rustle of unseen leaves whispered against my skin. Movement snagged my gaze. Amidst the luminous flora, a shape stirred. Not a thing, but a figure, lithe, fluid, weaving through the blossoms. As I watched, mesmerized, others materialized, joining in a silent, intricate choreography. Their grace was unnerving, too perfect, too smooth. And their faces, a cold dread pierced me as I realized they possessed none. Only polished, featureless ovals turned blankly towards the moon. My awe curdled into primal fear. I retreated, stumbling backward. As I moved, the dancers pivoted, their blank visages swiveling towards me in unison. I scrambled back through the doorway, slamming the heavy oak shut, leaning against it, breath ragged. A dream, surely? A hallucination born of fatigue and dust? But, glancing down, I saw them. Iridescent petals clinging to my boots, their otherworldly glow already dimming, fading like dying embers. Propelled now by a harrowing blend of terror and fascination, I sought the next door. This one, fashioned from wood dark as anthracite, bore carvings of tempestuous oceans, colossal serpentine forms coiled in the abyssal depths. A heartbeat's hesitation, then I twisted the handle. A blast of brine-laced wind struck my face. The door opened onto the tilting deck of a galleon, timbers groaning, pitching violently on a storm-racked sea. Rain lashed down like needles as I clung to the salt-slick rail, staring into the churning chaos. Far off, something immense breached the waves, a vast, undulating silhouette against the stark, electric glare of lightning. Horror and wonder warred within me as it ascended, impossibly high, eclipsing the storm-torn sky. A single, cyclopean eye, incandescent with eldritch light, fixed upon the vessel, upon me. I felt the crushing weight of that gaze, ancient beyond reckoning, alien, and knew I beheld a power that predated mankind, a power that would persist long after our fleeting existence. The eye blinked, plunging the scene into momentary darkness. In that instant, I hurled myself backward, slamming the door just as a gargantuan tentacle smashed down upon the very spot where I had stood. My knees buckled. I slid to the corridor floor, gulping air, the phantom taste of salt stinging my lips, the roar of that impossible tempest echoing in my skull. So it continued, door after relentless door. Each portal unveiled a different reality, a fresh impossibility. A boundless desert of shifting violet sands where towering crystal spires sang keenan threnodies to a sky holding 3 moons. A forest of pulsing, vascular flora where trees throbbed with a sickening vitality and fruit wept tears of blood when disturbed. A city of vertiginous, non-Euclidean geometry where gravity seemed capricious and shadowed entities flickered through structures mocking all known physics. With every world glimpsed, my grasp on the mundane slipped further. These vistas, these entities, they fractured every assumption I held about the cosmos. Yet I pressed on, drawn by an irresistible compulsion, moving from one threshold to the next even as sanity shrieked for retreat from this house of unraveling realities. At last, only the 13th door remained. It stood apart, smaller than its brethren, almost unassuming, crafted from a pale, unfamiliar timber. A simple brass knob was its sole feature. My hand shook violently as I reached for it, the metal cool against my trembling skin. Turning it, I braced for whatever new marvel or monstrosity awaited. It opened onto a study. My study. The precise room I had occupied when the clock struck midnight. A disorienting sense of return washed over me, quickly displaced by wrongness. The room was a perfect reflection, every object mirrored, and seated at the desk, quill poised above parchment, was myself. My counterpart looked up as I entered, a melancholy smile touching his lips. "I wondered when you might arrive," he said, his voice my own, yet imbued with an unfamiliar weariness. What is this?" I stammered. "What's happening here?" The other, me sighed, laying down the quill. "This is the culmination," he replied, "and the commencement. You have witnessed the beyond, the realms sequestered behind the portals. Now, a decision awaits." He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. Numbly, I sank into it. "The Penhallows," he went on, his gaze steady, "were never mere collectors. They were sentinels, keepers of the ways, protectors of the fragile boundaries partitioning worlds. For untold generations they maintained the watch, ensuring that what lies beyond remains beyond." My head swam. I shook it, struggling to absorb the staggering implication. But why me? Why reveal all this? The smile returned, devoid of mirth. Because the last Penhallow is no more. The burden now falls to another. You have a choice. Depart from here, attempt to erase these sights, resume a mundane existence, though you will forever glance over your shoulder, forever question the shadows. Or, I prompted, a cold certainty solidifying in my gut. Or you assume the charge. Become the new sentinel. Keep the portals sealed. Shield this reality from the others. Understand this, however, acceptance is irrevocable. This becomes your life, your sole purpose, until your final breath. Silence stretched, thick with the weight of unseen worlds. A part of me screamed to run, to bolt from this house of terrifying wonders and never look back. But another part, awakened, irrevocably altered by the night's revelations, knew escape was an illusion. What must I do? The question emerged, quiet but resolute. My reflection nodded, a flicker of understanding, perhaps relief in his eyes. He slid a sheet of parchment across the polished wood, a contract, stark and formal. At the bottom, a line awaited a signature. "Sign," he instructed simply. "Embrace the duty. Become the guardian." With a hand that trembled only faintly now, I took the offered quill. As my name flowed onto the parchment in black ink, a profound shift occurred, not in the room, but within me. A palpable weight settled onto my spirit, an influx of intuitive knowledge about the doors, the myriad realities they contained, the precarious equilibrium demanding constant vigilance. I understood. I knew my task. As the ink began to dry, my counterpart started to shimmer, his form becoming translucent. "Fortune attend you," he murmured, his voice already fading, distant. "The doors are yours to keep now." Then he vanished. I was alone in the study. My study, yet profoundly changed. I could feel them now, the 13 doors, a constant, low hum at the edge of my awareness. 13 worlds, 13 fragile seals, all now under my charge, my protection. I rose, squaring my shoulders against the sudden, immense burden. There was work ahead. The night remained deep, and there were thresholds to inspect, boundaries to reinforce. I was the guardian now, after all, and the doors awaited my vigil. "2:17 in the morning. An unholy hour etched onto my internal clock by dread. Even now, months removed from that initial violation, my consciousness splinters awake at this precise minute, my pulse already a frantic drum against my ribs before awareness fully dawns. But perhaps detailing the genesis of this nightly rupture, recounting the event and its relentless aftermath, will illuminate why my own bedroom remains a place I cannot bear to inhabit. Mine was a solitary existence within a 2-story dwelling in suburban Connecticut, a perfectly unremarkable colonial edifice clad in white siding, its black shutters like vacant eyes. My chamber resided upstairs, dominated by a broad window that surveyed the backyard and the encroaching woods beyond. A simple pane of glass I'd scarcely considered until the night it became a portal. That evening unfolded with banal predictability. Mind-numbing television bled into the late hours, and I sought refuge in sleep around 11. Silence draped the house, punctuated only by the familiar groans of settling timber. Slumber claimed me swiftly, a mercy I recall with poignant clarity, for it was the last untroubled rest I would know. The rapping shattered the quiet. 3 distinct contacts. Tap, 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 subdued yet crystalline, like knuckles lightly, almost politely, testing the glass. My eyelids flew open into the oppressive dark. For a suspended heartbeat, I lay paralyzed, adrift between dream and reality. Then, again, tap, tap, tap. A knot tightened in my throat. The origin was unmistakable. My bedroom window. My second-floor bedroom window. Slowly, deliberately, I pivoted my head towards the sound, my chest constricting. The amber wash of a distant street lamp filtered through the pane, painting faint, distorted shapes, but revealing no silhouette, no form clinging to the exterior. Tap, tap, tap. My fingers clenched the duvet, a useless shield. This was no phantom of sleep, but the height. Access demanded a ladder, an ascent surely heralded by scraping metal or muffled footfalls. There had been nothing. With a surge of adrenaline, I swung my legs over the side, bare feet meeting the frigid kiss of the hardwood floor. A tremor ran through me as I rose. 10 feet separated me from the window. Each step forward was a negotiation with fear. One pace, then another. The tapping ceased. My vision, now acclimated to the gloom, scanned the familiar contours of the yard. The gnarled oak, the dilapidated shed, the stark demarcation of pines bordering my property. Vacancy. Nothing disturbed the inert landscape. Closer now, the frantic thrumming in my chest vibrating up into my throat. 5 feet, 4, 3. The glass appeared ordinary, a dark, reflective void within its white frame. No leering face, no spectral hands pressed flat. Just emptiness. Hesitantly, I extended a hand, my fingertips brushing the surface. An unnatural cold radiated from it, far exceeding the ambient winter air, instantly fogging the pane where I touched. I pressed my face near, cupping my hands to shield against internal reflections, scrutinizing the yard from every conceivable angle. Above, below, left, right. Nothing but shivering air and deep shadow. Retreating, I released a ragged breath. Imagination, perhaps? A wind-tossed branch? A nocturnal creature? I turned, seeking the illusory safety of my bed, and then I heard it. Not the tapping, but a slow, grating squeal, the sound of friction on glass, deliberate and drawn out. I spun back. The window remained stubbornly empty. Sleep became an impossibility. I remained ensconced in bed, rigid, eyes locked on the window until the first tentative fingers of dawn painted the sky in bruised grays and purples. As light bled into the room, a measure of rationality returned. The night terrors, whatever their substance, had passed with the darkness. Stiffly, I rose and approached the window, chiding my overactive nerves. In the clarity of morning, all seemed mundane. I reached for the latch, intending to invite in the crisp air. That's when my gaze snagged on them. On the inside of the glass, fingerprints, starkly defined in the daylight, whorls and loops perfectly rendered. Yet they were inverted, impossibly mirrored, as if imprinted from the exterior yet manifesting within the pane. I stumbled back, colliding with the bed frame. Dozens littered the surface, overlapping, some showing full palms, fingers splayed like spectral starfish, others mere fingertip impressions, echoing the pattern of the tapping. Panic sent me scrambling downstairs and out into the dew-kissed yard. I needed the external perspective. Craning my neck, I stared up. The outer surface of the window was immaculate, reflecting the morning sky without blemish. No marks, no prints. Back inside, heart pounding, I examined them again. Undeniably internal, I touched a print. It felt real, a faint residue of oil on the cold glass, but not mine. These were larger, some bearing ridge patterns utterly alien to me. My phone became my witness, capturing image after image. Then I summoned the police. 2 uniformed officers arrived, their presence a thin veneer of normalcy over the utterly bizarre. They absorbed my fractured narrative, inspected the window, snapped their own photographs. A cursory search of the grounds yielded nothing. No disturbed earth, no ladder impressions. Could someone have gained entry? One ventured, his tone professionally skeptical. Left the prints from inside? I shook my head vehemently. Every door, every window secured. The house had been silent save for the tapping. They took my statement, offered hollow assurances of increased patrols, and departed, their disbelief a palpable weight left behind. How could they credit such a story? It defied logic. The remainder of the day was spent in a futile cleansing ritual, scrubbing at the glass, desperate to erase the violation. Yet some prints resisted, ghost images seemingly fused with the material itself. That night, I sought refuge on the living room sofa downstairs. But at 2:17 a.m., the familiar cadence returned. Tap, 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 emanating now from the large bay window. I lay frozen, a prisoner of sound. The tapping migrated, a slow, deliberate circuit around the ground floor, window by window. Reaching the front door, it paused. The ensuing silence stretched, taut and menacing. I watched the doorknob, expecting it to turn. it remained still. No forced entry. Yet morning revealed fresh constellations of reversed fingerprints on the interior of every downstairs window, and even, chillingly, on the inside surface of the solid wood front door. A locksmith fortified the house with new locks. Security cameras sprouted, vigilant eyes monitoring every exterior angle. Motion sensors guarded each window. A professional security service was engaged, their monitors perpetually watched. It was all for naught. Nightly, at 2:17 a.m., the tapping commenced. Sometimes windows, sometimes doors. The cameras recorded only stillness. The sensors remained silent, but dawn always brought new, impossible prints inside the glass. The haunting became portable. Hotel rooms, regardless of floor, offered no sanctuary. The 2:17 a.m. summons persisted, followed by the morning discovery of those signature inverted prints on the sealed hotel windows. I consulted physicians, endured psychological evaluations, submitted to sleep studies. All pronounced me physically and mentally sound. The fingerprints were tangible evidence, visible to others, not figments of a fractured psyche. Yet explanations remained elusive. One night, roughly a month into this siege, resolve hardened within me. I would confront this entity. I sat sentinel in my own bedroom, awaiting the appointed hour. As the first taps sounded, I rose, walked directly to the window, and pressed my palm flat against the glass. The rapping ceased instantly. An impossible cold bloomed beneath my hand, intense enough to burn. I tried to retract my arm, but it was held fast, an invisible force pinning it to the pane. Something pressed back from the other side. Though nothing was visible through the glass, the sensation was undeniable. A hand, mirroring mine, exerting pressure from the void beyond. The force intensified. I feared the window would implode. Then a new sensation, utterly violating the laws of physics. Ghostly fingers intertwining with mine, phasing through. The solid barrier as if it were mere smoke. Cold, substantial digits wrapped around my hand. With a strangled cry and a violent surge of adrenaline, I ripped my hand free, stumbling backward to the floor. My fingers were coated in a thin layer of frost. Seared into my palm was the perfect negative impression of another hand, a phantom brand. The mark eventually faded, but the nocturnal visitation never ceased. It finds me still, every night at 2:17 a.m., wherever I happen to be. The fingerprints materialize each morning. I have adapted after a fashion. Day is for sleeping, night is for vigilance. Sometimes the thought flickers, press my hand to the glass again, allow that cold grip to fully engage, let whatever resides beyond pull me through. Perhaps then understanding would dawn, but the fear holds me captive. And so I wait each night for 2:17 a.m., listening to the soft insistence, watching new prints bloom on the inside of my windows. I ponder how many others share this vigil, lying awake in the dark, hearing those same taps, finding those same impossible marks come morning. I recognize the incredulity this tale invites. Told by another, I too would dismiss it. Yet every syllable resonates with truth. Should you ever be startled from sleep by that soft percussion against your window, even nestled high in some towering skyscraper, resist the urge to look. Do not touch the glass. Pray that morning reveals any marks to be solely on the exterior. because once they manifest within, the barrier is irrevocably breached, and the entity that leaves them will return, night after night, reaching, always reaching, trying to draw you into a place I dare not contemplate. I hear it now. The familiar rhythm begins. 2:17, punctual as ever. Tonight, it's at my office window, 30 floors above the sleeping city. I will not turn. I never look anymore, but I know, with chilling certainty, that dawn will reveal fresh prints on the inner surface of the glass, tangible evidence of something reaching out from the other side of the pane, waiting patiently for the night I finally succumb and reach back. The memory clings, sharp as broken glass. The first night, the ceiling above began to speak. It was shortly after I'd taken residence in this ancient edifice, its veins of thick brick mortar deep, its timber-framed windows groaning against the wind's assault whenever the gales blew. Sleep was claiming me, pulling me under its gentle tide when the sound tore through the quiet. A gravid weight dragged, a sound like stone grinding stone, originating directly overhead. I bolted upright, a frantic percussion suddenly hammering against my ribs. Loud, undeniably loud. Instinct urged me to dismiss it, the mundane symphony of apartment living, yet the sound persisted, refusing anonymity. Then came the footfalls, a measured, deliberate tread traversing the space above, from one unseen wall to the other. Heavy steps, resonant enough to send tremors through the plaster above, a faint vibration shivering the frame of my bed. A knot of ice formed low in my belly. Perhaps, I reasoned, merely a new resident settling in, wrestling furniture into place under the cloak of night. But a deeper intuition recoiled. The rhythm was too steady, too methodical, as if tracing a prescribed, inescapable path. My dwelling occupies the third level of this 4-story structure. A modest space comprising a single bedroom, a lean living area, and those same archaic wooden windows prone to slamming shut violently unless propped open with a wedge. The building's reputation rests on its antiquated construction. Lore amongst tenants claims the walls swallow sound whole, rendering televisions and conversations utterly private. Yet, somehow, the territory above mine broadcast every scrape, every impact, every footstep with unnerving clarity. That initial encounter registered mostly as irritation, a fleeting annoyance. But the phenomenon became nocturnal scripture, repeating itself around the 11th hour. Sometimes it was the distinct agony of furniture dragged unwillingly across floorboards. Other times, the sharp report of something substantial dropped, succeeded by low, concussive thuds that resonated down, making the ceiling a drumhead. Mornings occasionally offered a glimpse of the man from the 4th floor, Mr. Silas Thorne, stepping into the lift encased in a suit. He was a man seemingly bleached of distinction, his face etched with weariness, hair unremarkable, perpetually rushing. Our paths rarely converged. My work kept me home, while he vanished early and returned late. I'd attempt a greeting. He might return a curt nod, a mumbled syllable of acknowledgement, nothing more. I often wondered if my own existence, the murmur of my television, the occasional sound of life, disturbed him, before recalling the legendary thickness of these walls. We were fortunate, supposedly, to hear anything at all. Except I heard everything from his domain, every single night. I began to anticipate the clock striking 11. Why that specific hour held significance, I couldn't fathom, but its approach tightened a band around my chest. Lounging on my sofa, scrolling through the digital ether of my phone or attempting distraction with a film, my focus inevitably frayed. Concentration dissolved, replaced by the tense expectation of the familiar disturbance. And then, with the chilling precision of some unholy rite, the footfalls would commence, slow, weighty, one step echoing the last. Brief pauses punctuated the rhythm, pregnant silences broken by the grating signature of something being hauled across the floor. A sound evocative of a heavy table, perhaps, or an old chest. A low, rasping friction, followed by another volley of thumps that sent my ceiling lamp into a nervous quiver. By then, sleep was a distant shore. My heart hammered an irregular beat against my ribs. A clammy dampness slicked my palms. "Ignore it," I commanded myself. The man upstairs, Thorne, was merely restless. An insomniac, maybe, or possessed by a nocturnal urge to rearrange his surroundings. Yet the sounds defied mundane explanation. They felt too purposeful, too ritualistic. The performance lasted roughly an hour, sometimes slightly more, sometimes less, ceasing as abruptly as it began. In the ensuing silence, I'd lie rigid, anticipating a recurrence, straining for another scrape, another stomp. Sleep, when it came, was shallow, easily shattered by the next phantom thud. My life settled into a disquieting loop. Daylight quiescence, nocturnal cacophony, morning's deceptive normality. One night, patience frayed beyond repair, I resolved to confront the source. Midnight was near. Clad in pajamas but shod and gripping a torch against the hallway's flickering, unreliable lights, I stepped into the corridor. A profound stillness met me, the air thick and dead, as if sound itself feared to trespass here. Only the low hum of the fluorescent tubes broke the silence. No footsteps from above, no dragging, no impacts. It was a vacuum. I hesitated by the lift, the urge to retreat warring with my keyed-up state. I pressed the button. The ascent was swift, the doors parting onto the fourth-floor landing. Emptiness reigned. No sliver of light beneath Thorne's door, no whisper of occupancy. I approached, rapping lightly at first, then with more force. Silence answered. Holding my breath, I strained to hear anything. Respiration, a radio, the smallest sign of life. Nothing. After a minute that stretched thin as wire, I admitted defeat and descended. The instant my head touched the pillow, the symphony resumed overhead. Dragging, stomping, more dragging. My eyes flew open. A cold, prickling sensation crawled up the back of my neck. I glanced at the clock. 11:20 p.m. Tentative inquiries with neighbors on my floor yielded nothing. Some employed earplugs. Others swore the building was tomb quiet. Mr. Gable, the building's custodian, offered only a weary shrug, his words dusty with indifference. "Thick walls," he'd mumbled, suggesting perhaps a shared structural beam or pipe conducted sounds erratically from elsewhere. Best ignore it. And ignore it I tried for a time. Then, roughly 3 weeks passed, a dissonance emerged. I hadn't seen Mr. Thorne in days. A business trip, I presumed. Yet the 11 o'clock noises persisted, undiminished. The scraping, the footfalls, The intermittent thuds continued their nightly performance. One evening, determined, I stayed awake, movie playing unheeded, waiting. As the familiar sounds began, I bolted into the hallway. Again, silence, stillness, the low hum of the lights. Retreating inside, the sounds immediately recommenced above me, punctual as a heartbeat. A morning encounter with Mr. Gable in the lobby shifted the ground beneath my feet. He inquired, casually, if I possessed contact details for the fourth-floor tenant. I admitted I did not. Moved out, Gable stated, matter-of-factly. Weeks ago, maybe a month now. A cold dread coiled in my gut. I countered, voice perhaps unsteady, that I'd heard unmistakable noises from that very apartment just the night before. Impossible, he retorted flatly. Units empty. Keys returned. I clamped my mouth shut, unwilling to sound unhinged, but the tightness in my chest remained, a persistent ache throughout the day. That night, the sounds returned. Punctual. Inescapable. I sat, immobile in my armchair, gaze fixed on the ceiling, my hands betraying a slight tremor. The floorboards above groaned under heavy steps, sometimes sounding like multiple pairs of feet, other times like one person pacing with immense weight. The scraping began anew. My light fixtures swayed gently. Fine dust motes drifted down from the ceiling's edges. My mouth felt arid. A primal urge to flee warred with a paralyzing dread. The apartment was vacant, yet activity resonated from it, clear as day, right above my head. I tried Gable's mobile number. It rang unanswered. Pacing my narrow living room, the rhythmic thudding overhead became a maddening metronome. Call the authorities? On what grounds? Strange noises emanating from a confirmed empty unit? My thoughts spun wildly. Squatters? Someone illicitly accessing the space? A clandestine contractor? But the timing, the ritualistic 11 o'clock start, the specific nature of the sounds, dragging, pacing, none of it aligned with logical explanations. The following afternoon, resolved to act, I ascended to the fourth floor during the day's guaranteed silence. I tried the door, locked solid. Pressing my ear flat against the cool wood yielded absolute nothingness. I scanned the hallway, the window, searching for any sign of disturbance, forced entry. Everything appeared undisturbed, the door coated in a fine layer of dust, the handle cold to the touch. I lingered, a profound unease settling in my stomach, before finally retreating downstairs, attempting to submerge myself in the mundane rhythm of the day. Evening found me returning from errands around 7. A hastily prepared meal, television offering flimsy solace. By 10:30, the familiar tension gripped me. My pulse quickened in anticipation, though silence still reigned. Every incidental creak of my own apartment made me jump. At 10:55, I extinguished all lights, sinking into the darkness of my sofa, listening. Precisely at 11:01, the first thud landed, directly above the kitchen space. Another followed near the living room section of the ceiling. The footfalls commenced their methodical march. My breathing grew shallow, the band around my chest constricting. Slipping silently to my front door, I cracked it open, straining to hear into the hallway. Utter silence greeted me from the corridor. I retreated, securing the lock. Overhead, the pacing and scraping continued unabated. Switching on my phone's torch, I aimed its beam upwards. tiny flakes of paint dislodged from the ceiling's periphery with each heavy impact. Vibrations traveled down, palpable beneath my feet, as if the building itself channeled the movement directly to me. Then began a long, drawn-out scraping, the sound of something substantial being dragged the entire length of the apartment above. Goose flesh prickled my skin. My heart pounded with such force I felt the pressure building in my ears. Words began tumbling out of me, whispers into the oppressive dark. This isn't real. The apartment is empty. Futile denials against the relentless auditory assault. The tension solidified into a persistent ache across my shoulders. Tolerance evaporated. Snatching my keys and phone, I stormed out, taking the stairs this time, 2 at a time, stopping directly before the 4th-floor door. My hand quivered as I reached for the knob. Locked. I pressed my ear against the wood again. Cold, inert, no sound penetrated from within. I stood there, breath ragged, mind reeling in confusion. If an intruder were inside, surely some sound would bleed into the utterly silent hallway, disturbed only by the faint electrical hum. After moments suspended in this auditory void, I turned, descending the stairs, my phone's light dancing on airborne dust. Back in my apartment, door locked, the sounds resumed the instant I sank onto the sofa. The paradox hammered at my sanity. The noise seemingly hermetically sealed within that upper space, audible only from my position directly below. The next day, I confronted Gable again, recounting everything. He repeated his mantra: empty unit, returned keys, no access. He offered flimsy explanations: old plumbing, pipes contracting in the night air, explanations that felt insulting against the distinct, undeniable character of the sounds, the weight of footsteps, the friction of dragging. We argued briefly, fruitlessly, ending with his familiar shrug of helplessness. Frustration and a chill and bewilderment settled over me. I took to sleeping in the living room, the television murmuring through the night, a desperate bid to mask the intrusion. It offered little defense. The footfalls and dragging noises pierced the electronic veil, vibrating through the ceiling with unwavering intensity. Some nights, overwhelmed by fear, I'd escape into the street, walking aimlessly until a semblance of calm returned, only to find the noises waiting faithfully upon my return. Anxiety gnawed at my appetite. Meals were skipped, my stomach perpetually clenched. One night, the dragging escalated. It persisted for a solid hour, a continuous grinding scrape from one end of the apartment to the other and back again. My ceiling light fixture swayed perceptibly with the vibrations. A certainty grew that something structural was about to yield. My chest felt painfully tight, my forehead beaded with clammy sweat. I paced, checked the time incessantly, phone clutched in a trembling hand, ready to call. Whom? My pulse throbbed visibly in my neck. Around midnight, the scraping ceased. The footfalls slowed, then faded into silence. I collapsed onto the floor, utterly drained, fighting the insidious thought that perhaps my mind was fracturing, even as the physical sensations, the vibrations, the sounds, screamed their reality. Thoughts of contacting the unit's owner surfaced, only to founder on my lack of information. Gable, likely viewing me as a persistent nuisance, offered no details. The impulse to break in, to violate the lock and confront the emptiness, or whatever resided there, flickered. But the potential consequences, the sheer irrationality, held me back. So now I sit here, night after night, waiting. The sounds always arrive. Thorn is gone. The unit is officially vacant. Yet the phantom tenancy continues its relentless nocturnal ritual. I feel trapped, suspended between the urge to storm the upper floor, force the door, and confront the impossible, and the paralyzing fear that doing so is a terrible mistake. Perhaps ignorance is a fragile shield worth preserving. But the noises offer no respite. They seem, if anything, to encroach further, sometimes beginning earlier, closer to 10:30, extending past midnight. Sleep is a forgotten country. Clarity frays at the edges. The throb in my temple begins with the anticipation, escalating with the first overhead thud. Each morning reveals darker circles beneath my eyes, a dull, persistent ache deep in my chest. Friends remain unaware. The fear of being dismissed as delusional silences me. But denial is a crumbling dam. It is 10:55 p.m. now. I am hunched over this screen at my kitchen table, the words a desperate release. Already, I brace myself. My hands tremble slightly. I swallow against a throat gone dry. The window beside me rattles softly in a rising breeze, a sound utterly insufficient to mask what is imminent. My gaze lifts involuntarily to the ceiling. My stomach churns. A faint creak sounds from above, punctual as doom. My heart rate accelerates. A slow, heavy step lands overhead. Then another. The ceiling lamp shivers. The vise tightens around my chest. The scraping begins. A visceral sound that resonates through the floor, up my legs, into the very marrow of my bones. My hands fly to my ears, a futile gesture. The sound penetrates flesh and bone. My lungs feel compressed. Thoughts scatter like frightened birds. A chill dampness slicks my back. I don't know the source of these noises. A person? Something else entirely? Or am I merely attuned to some bizarre, localized resonance within this decaying structure? But it is real. I feel its presence in my bones. What to do? Ascend the stairs again? Force the lock? Risk Gable's final dismissal? Perhaps eviction? Or continue this nightly vigil, pretending deafness? Right now, the footfalls are heavy, incessant. My ceiling groans under the pressure of each step. The scraping is louder tonight, raw, insistent. A high-pitched ringing fills my ears. I am exhausted, and I am profoundly afraid. I possess no proof, only the unwavering certainty that something occupies the space above me, something that shifts furniture and paces relentlessly in a locked, empty apartment. Gable insists it's vacant. It is supposed to be empty, but the sounds are undeniable, inescapable. They will not stop. This, then, is the shape of my existence. No tangible harm has occurred. No other soul seems disturbed. I am isolated in this auditory haunting, sleep-deprived and unraveling. This nightly visitation cannot continue, yet I lack the courage, or perhaps the foolhardiness, to confront its source. Not yet. For now, I remain here, hands shaking, teeth clenched, listening to the steady, maddening thud of footsteps from the locked, empty apartment overhead. Perhaps tomorrow resolve will dawn, or perhaps not. Uncertainty is my unwanted companion. All I can do is sit, night after night, awaiting the inevitable prelude, that first thud, striking precisely at the 11th hour. And so it continues. A tremor of apprehension, less excitement than unease, vibrated through me as I stood before the cabin's weather-beaten threshold. Damp air, heavy with the scent of decaying leaves, clung insistently to my jacket. Mist had been my silent companion on the long, winding ascent, a shroud that refused to lift, and my hands still held the ghost stiffness of gripping the wheel. Pushing the door inward, I surrendered momentarily to the gloom before flicking a switch. A lone bulb overhead cast a weak, jaundiced glow. One sprawling room served as living space, bleeding into a compact kitchen alcove, while narrow stairs climbed sharply toward a loft. Against the walls, shadowed forms of old furniture huddled like patient ghosts. My boots elicited weary groans from the floorboards with every step. The place breathed neglect, yet lacked the chaos of vandalism. Dropping my pack, I tested the sturdiness of the chairs. One responded with a precarious wobble. Dust lay thick as velvet on every surface. A swipe across the tabletop left my fingers coated in gray powder. Near the windows, the air held a distinct musty tang. In the kitchen niche, the faucet coughed and sputtered before yielding a reluctant trickle of water. An archaic stove stood sentinel beside mostly vacant cupboards, revealing only a few chipped plates and mugs, seemingly clean despite their age. Crossing back through the main room, my gaze followed the steep staircase. Each riser protested my weight with a sharp pop. The loft proved a constricted space beneath a low, angled ceiling, dominated by a stark metal bed frame stripped bare of its mattress. Beside it, another door, presumably leading to attic crawl space or storage, resisted my pull. Stuck fast. I didn't force it. Prying wasn't my purpose here. Solitude was the quarry. Downstairs again, I unrolled my sleeping bag near the hearth where a modest stack of firewood waited. The logs felt dry, promising warmth. Minutes later, a nascent fire crackled to life, its small flames spitting embers, casting dancing light and radiating a gentle heat that soothed my chilled face. A few days detached, swallowed by silence, that was the aim. Crowds frayed my nerves. Isolation was the balm I sought. Rest, perhaps some aimless wandering through the mist-laden woods, a chance to let the mind settle. Nothing more profound than quiet refuge was anticipated. The first day dissolved uneventfully. I mapped the cabin's small confines, checked window seals against the pervasive damp, arranged my meager provisions. Outside, the fog remained an impenetrable curtain. As dusk bled into the room, I lit candles brought from home, preferring their flickering intimacy to the uncertain promise of the cabin's old lanterns. Later, cocooned in my sleeping bag near the hearth, the fire's embers pulsing softly, I listened. Only the ceaseless sigh of the wind and the occasional snap of an unseen branch disturbed the quiet. Eyelids grew heavy. Consciousness began to fray. That's when it came. A delicate pressure from above. A faint shift. My eyes snapped open. The loft floor was directly overhead. Old timbers settling, I reasoned. Then, again, more definite this time, the distinct complaint of a floorboard under weight. I went utterly still, heart hammering against my ribs. Staring upward into the shadowed ceiling, I held my breath, waiting. Silence stretched. Then another step. A slow, deliberate creak. A hard swallow. Wind, surely. The house breathing, adjusting to the night's chill. My eyes ached from straining into the dimness, but nothing further stirred. Exhaustion eventually claimed me, pulling me under despite the lingering tension. Morning arrived with a stiff neck and the sight of my own breath pluming in the frigid air. The fire was dead ash. Sitting up, I scanned the room. Everything remained precisely as I'd left it. No muddy prints marred the dusty floor, no splintered wood around the doorframe. I fought to dismiss the unease. Opening the front door invited a swirl of cold, damp air. The fog clung as thick as ever, swallowing the treetops whole, beating moisture on my sleeves. The chill brought tears to my eyes. A short walk seemed necessary. The earth outside was sodden, yielding underfoot. Wind whispered through unseen branches, but no birdsong broke the profound stillness. It felt as though the world itself held its breath. Back inside, coffee brewed on the hissing stove. I sat at the table, sipping the bitter liquid from a chipped mug, the sounds from the night replaying relentlessly in my mind. One part of me craved rational dismissal. Another couldn't shake the chill and clarity of those footsteps. After coffee, I busied myself with small tasks, wiping down surfaces, rechecking the damp window frames, solid despite the moisture. Activity, I hoped, might quell the rising tide of anxiety. Through the afternoon, the cabin walls seemed to converse in soft pops and clicks. Wood settling, I told myself, reacting to subtle temperature shifts. The floors sighed under my weight predictably, but sometimes a different sound emerged. A quiet exhalation, almost a breath, seeming to emanate from the room's shadowed corners. Each time I froze, eyes darting, finding no source. The cabin felt alive, possessed of its own quiet respiration. I focused on the mundane, fiddling with the small radio I'd brought. No signal penetrated this isolation. Inventorying canned goods, planning a simple supper. Darkness fell again, and I built the fire higher, its hungry flames casting more robust shadows. Candles were stationed strategically, guardians against the encroaching night. I settled near the hearth with a yellowed magazine unearthed from a drawer, its outdated articles offering little distraction. My senses remained hyper-alert, scanning the periphery, anticipating something. The wind rattled the panes, the fire popped and flared. Eventually, weary eyes forced me to stand, to stretch. Time for bed, such as it was. Unrolling the sleeping bag, I left one candle burning on a nearby stool. A small, flickering sentinel against the dark, safety be damned. Drowsiness began its soft pull. Then, a palpable shift in the room's atmosphere. The candle flame wavered violently. The walls groaned, and a low guttural sound resonated from somewhere overhead. My heart seized. Bolting upright, I scanned the room just as the candle on the stool extinguished itself. Darkness rushed in. Rubbing my eyes, I struggled to adjust, the dying embers offering only the faintest orange relief. A profound chill traced its way across my skin. The wind hammered the windows, yes, but this felt different, internal. My pulse became a frantic drumbeat. Slowly, shakily, I rose, bracing a hand on the floor. Breath hitched, mouth went dry. A scraping noise tore through the silence, emanating from the loft, like a chair leg being dragged across bare wood. I found myself at the foot of the stairs, peering into absolute blackness. listening intently. A faint shuffling drifted down, the cadence of slow, measured steps. Vertigo threatened, but I forced a sound from my tight throat, a cracked greeting, pleading for it to be imagination. Silence answered. My legs felt like water. Retreating, I fumbled back to the sleeping bag, pulling it around me like armor, eyes locked on the stairs until sheer nervous exhaustion dragged me back into sleep. The next dawn mirrored the last. Cold air, aching back. I rose, chafing warmth back into my arms. A glance upward confirmed the stairs were empty. The candle stood on its stool, a solidified river of wax down its side. Poking at the fireplace ashes, my mind replayed the loft sounds. Not imagined. Footsteps. Real. The day passed under a pall of dread. Bread and canned beans for sustenance. Another forced march outside, the fog stubbornly persistent, erasing the cabin behind me as I ventured onto the hillside. Trees crowded close, their trunks dark and slick with moisture. The silence was immense, broken only by wind-shaken branches and, once, the distant crack of falling timber. Disorientation set in. The landscape became alien. Panic tightened my chest and I scrambled back, relief warring with apprehension upon seeing the cabin reappear through the gray veil. Late afternoon brought a sharp drop in temperature. Shivering, I coaxed a new fire into existence. While it caught, I prowled the cabin's interior, a meticulous, nerve-fueled inspection. Cupboards opened, furniture peered under. Upstairs again, I wrestled with the stuck attic door. It remained immovable, as if braced from within. My muscles strained, palms slick against the cold knob. Defeated, breathing hard, I backed away, trying desperately not to speculate about what lay beyond. Evening demanded more light. Candles were placed anew, at the stair base, on the table, near my sleeping bag. Sentinels in a losing battle. I huddled by the fire, mind racing through frantic possibilities. A trapped animal? A hidden intruder? Or was my own sanity fraying in the oppressive solitude? I fought sleep, determined to remain vigilant. Around midnight, the candle flames began to dance erratically. The air grew heavy, thick. Then, a whisper, chillingly close, shaping my name, seeming to brush against my ear from the very walls. Muscles locked. I scanned the room. No draft explained it. The cabin felt sealed, yet the whisper persisted. I surged to my feet, legs nearly buckling. My heart felt poised to burst. Words tumbled out, incoherent pleas or commands to whatever shared this space. Suddenly, the candle on the table winked out. The one by the stairs guttered, then died. Goose flesh prickled my arms. Clutching the last candle, my hand trembled, making its small flame jitter wildly. A floorboard creaked directly behind me. My stomach plummeted. I spun around, seeing nothing in the encroaching dark, yet feeling an undeniable presence shifting across the planks. Mouth bone dry. Backing away, I hit the cold wall, a gasp lodging in my throat. "Run!" screamed instinct, but my feet were leaden anchors. Pinned against the wood, the final candle flickered, faltered, and plunged me into absolute darkness. My own ragged breathing filled the void. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The room seemed to hum with unseen movement, soft clicks and sighs surrounding me. Was that breathing, shallow and close, not my own? Reaching out blindly, my hand found the back of the wobbly chair. I gripped it, a flimsy anchor in the terrifying dark. A frantic fumble in my pocket produced a lighter. Sparks flew, then a tiny flame bloomed, pushing back the suffocating blackness by mere inches. Stumbling towards the hearth, I managed to feed the embers a sliver of kindling. After several tense moments, a fragile flame caught. Kneeling there, lighter still clutched tight, every nerve ending screamed. Listening. The fire crackled louder, casting a slightly larger circle of light. Waiting, straining to hear over the blood pounding in my ears. A minute crawled by. Another. The sense of presence remained, potent and near, yet unseen. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the room's chill. Gradually, the oppressive weight in the room seemed to lessen slightly. The fire's glow offered a small pool of relative safety. Knees shaken, I stood, sweeping my gaze toward the stairs. Empty. The front door remained shut. Wiping my brow, I fought to regulate my breathing. My hands felt clammy. Retrieving my flashlight from beside the sleeping bag, I clicked it on. Its beam sliced through the gloom. Floor, walls, nothing visibly disturbed, no tracks, no marks. My teeth chattered, a duet of cold and fear. Sleep was impossible. I spent the remainder of the night backed against the hearth, flashlight clutched in one hand, lighter in the other, feeding the fire whenever it threatened to die. My nerves were raw wire. Every settling groan of the house, every gust of wind made me flinch. The whispering returned intermittently, indistinct murmurs that seemed to call my name from impossible distances, behind the walls, just overhead. My scalp prickled with each recurrence. I focused on the fire's heat, the scent of wood smoke, desperate anchors to reality. Dawn's gray light filtering through the dusty panes brought only a hollow relief. I forced down some food, stomach churning, swallowing difficult. My hands shook too badly to hold the mug steady. A decision had to be made. Leave. Now. Part of me felt rooted, challenged by the cabin's oppressive spirit, but the memory of why I came here, for peace, not terror, cut through the paralysis. Packing became a hurried, almost frantic ritual. Folding the sleeping bag, gathering candle stubs, clearing away my traces. The cabin seemed to watch, its silence charged. The skin on my neck crawled. I resisted the constant urge to look back. Lingering felt dangerous, a step closer to losing myself entirely. The feeling of unseen movement behind the walls never ceased. Outside, loading the car, the air was biting, saturated with moisture. Fog clung stubbornly to the hillside. Closing the trunk, I cast one final look at the cabin, its aged wood blurring into the mist, indistinct and menacing. Inside the car, engine turning over, a surge of pure anxiety washed through me. The finality of escape suddenly feeling monumental. Pulse racing, sweat prickling my temples. Reversing, I navigated the downward slope. Driving away, eyes fixed on the treacherous path, the wind whipped the fog into swirling apparitions across the track. A single glance in the rearview mirror showed the cabin's roofline dissolving, swallowed by the gray. My mouth was parched, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Forward, only forward, putting distance between myself and that place. The voices were gone, but the frantic beat of my heart remained. An insidious unease lingered, as if the cabin's presence trailed just beyond the next bend. Miles down, the air began to thin, the fog receding into ragged patches. Glimpses of pale sky appeared. Slowly, the knots in my shoulders loosened, my breathing deepened. I realized my eyes were burning, dry from staring, from lack of sleep. My hands regained feeling. A profound, bone-deep weariness settled over me as I finally reached the main highway. No return. That vow solidified in my mind. No more nights listening to footsteps overhead. No more whispers weaving through the walls. No more sensing that silent observer pacing just beyond the firelight. The retreat I craved had twisted into something else entirely. A confrontation with a tension deeper and colder than any I'd known. Even now, safe in distance, the image of those dark corners remains sharp. The sound of creaking boards overhead echoes faintly. The feeling of being watched, studied in the dark. I doubt that we'll ever truly leave. The cabin released me physically, but a sliver of its chilling presence remains lodged in my mind, patient, perhaps, waiting. It will wait in vain. Retrospect paints warning signs everywhere, iridescent and stark against the memory of Maya. I see them now in the predatory gleam beneath her lashes, a flicker I dismissed amidst the exhilarating disorientation of my arrival. Bangkok had swallowed me whole for 3 days, a maelstrom of noise, incandescent color, and the relentless press of humanity. The city thrummed, a vibrant assault that electrified even as it drained me to the bone. That evening, adrift in the humid haze of the cheap hostel's common room, feet screaming, spirit frayed, my singular desire was for cool liquid and quiet solitude. Then she simply was there, emerging from the general fug like a conjurer's trick. 2 sweating bottles of beer were clutched in her hands, her grin wide and disarming. "Reckon you could use one of these?" The cadence was pure Australian sunshine, warm and inviting. Gratitude surged, eclipsing caution. I took the offered bottle, the condensation instantly slick against my palm. Soon, words flowed between us, easy and effervescent. Maya, a veteran of Southeast Asia's well-trodden paths, spilled stories and secrets, hidden temple courtyards whispering peace, street carts serving divine noodles under flickering bulbs, clandestine bars where locals shed the city's tourist skin. Hours dissolved like sugar in tea. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "Listen, there's this night market, yeah? Miles from anywhere tourists go. Properly local. Incredible food, stuff you won't find anywhere else. Souvenirs that are actually unique. Fancy checking it out." Hesitation fluttered, a moth against the screen of my fatigue. Darkness gathered outside, exhaustion pulled at my limbs. But Maya's energy was a contagion, and the lure of authentic Bangkok, a glimpse behind the curated facade, proved irresistible. "Okay," I heard myself agree, silencing the faint, insistent hum of unease in my mind's quietest corner. "Let's go." A tuk-tuk materialized, a 3-wheeled chariot that plunged us into the city's arterial chaos, weaving through traffic with heart-stopping agility. The familiar gleam of the tourist districts receded, replaced by neighborhoods whose edges were rougher, whose faces bore the lines of age and neglect. Maya's chatter, a bright, continuous stream about escapades in Vietnam and intriguing roadside encounters, served as a flimsy dam against the rising tide of my apprehension. Finally, the sputtering engine died on a street bathed in weak, intermittent light. Buildings loomed, paint peeling like sunburnt skin. The air hung heavy, different. A few solitary figures drifted through the gloom, phantoms compared to the vibrant throngs I'd navigated earlier. "Are you certain this is it?" The question felt thin in the charged silence. Maya's eyes shone with an unnerving brightness. "Definitely. Just down here. Come on." She tugged me into a narrow, shadowed alleyway. The clamor of the street muted instantly, replaced by an oppressive closeness as the buildings leaned inward, blotting out the sky. Doubt coiled tight in my stomach. Just as I was about to voice retreat, the alley disgorged us into a small, desolate square. A handful of stalls stood sentinel, offering unfamiliar fruits and vegetables under naked bulbs. An old woman stirred a vast, bubbling pot, its spicy aroma momentarily comforting. This was no bustling market. It was a stage set for something else entirely. "Let's grab a drink," Maya suggested brightly, already steering me toward a dim recess in one corner, a bar that seemed carved from the shadows themselves. Inside, emptiness echoed. A couple of locals hunched over their beers, oblivious. We claimed stools at the bar. Maya ordered in fluid, rapid-fire Thai. The bartender, a block of a man with a face like cracked earth, grunted, sliding 2 glasses filled with clear liquid towards us. "Cheers," Maya chirped, lifting her glass. The clink seemed unnaturally loud. I mirrored her gesture, took a tentative sip. Fire traced a path down my throat, settling into a deceptive warmth. We talked, or rather, Maya talked, spinning more tales of distant shores. But time began to warp. The room tilted almost imperceptibly. My thoughts grew viscous, sluggish. A glance at my watch confirmed only 30 minutes had passed, yet it felt like an eternity trapped in amber. "Think I need air," I stammered, the words thick and unwieldy on my tongue. Maya's face swam before me, her smile acquiring a sharp, predatory edge. "Oh, darling." Her voice seemed to echo from a great distance, distorted and cold. "I really don't think you're going anywhere." Ice water panic flooded my veins. The drink drugged. My body refused the frantic commands of my brain. I tried to rise, but my legs were leaden anchors. The room became a sickening vortex, and the floor rushed up to meet me. Strong hands intercepted my fall. Through the rapidly thickening fog clouding my vision, I saw the bartender move from behind the counter. He and Maya exchanged low, clipped words in Thai, the tone chillingly transactional. A silent scream built in my chest, but my limbs were useless, disconnected. Darkness surged, swallowing everything but the final, indelible image of Maya's face. The friendly mask dissolved, revealing something calculating and utterly devoid of warmth beneath. Pain was the first herald of returning consciousness. A dull, throbbing ache centered in my skull. My mouth felt like desert sand. Every muscle protested movement. When I tried to shift, I discovered the brutal reality. Ropes bit into my wrists and ankles, securing me fast. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed its way up my throat as fragmented memories solidified. Maya's smile, the dim bar, the cloying sweetness of betrayal in the drink. My eyes adjusted slowly to the oppressive gloom, revealing a small, featureless room. The air hung hot, stale, thick with the muffled sounds of distant traffic or muted voices. The creak of the door opening was accompanied by a blinding slash of fluorescent light. I flinched, squinting against the glare. 2 silhouettes filled the doorway. One was unmistakably Maya. The other, a man I didn't know. Tall, broad, his face an impassive stone carving. "Ah." The man's voice, roughened by a heavy accent, scraped the silence. "Our little bird decides to wake up." Maya lingered near the threshold, her gaze averted. The man advanced, crouching before me. His fingers, rough and strong, clamped onto my chin, forcing my head up. "You have become," he stated flatly, "an inconvenience. Your embassy makes inquiries. Your family calls the hotels. Tedious." I tried to form words, a plea, a curse, anything, but my tongue felt swollen, useless. A dry chuckle escaped him, utterly devoid of humor. "Do not trouble yourself. You will cease to be our problem soon. There are buyers, people who pay well for pretty cargo like you. A factory, perhaps? A brothel? The destinations are varied." A glacial wave of terror washed over me, extinguishing the last embers of disbelief. This wasn't mere robbery. This was a transaction in human flesh, and I was the product. He rose, dusting his hands with an air of distaste. "Prepare her for transport," he instructed Maya curtly. "They arrive within the hour." The door clicked shut, plunging me back into suffocating darkness. Despair threatened to drown me. How could I have been so blind, so utterly seduced by a veneer of friendship? But beneath the shock, a harder, colder emotion began to crystallize. Resolve. I would not be passive cargo. Ignoring the searing pain as the coarse fibers tore at my skin, I began to work frantically at the ropes binding my wrists. Time became elastic, stretching into an indeterminate agony of minutes or hours. Then, a subtle give. Hope flared. With a final, desperate surge of effort, one hand slipped free. Footsteps echoed outside. Swiftly, I rearranged myself, tucking my liberated hand beneath me, feigning continued helplessness. The door opened again. Maya entered, alone this time. She carried a bottle of water, her face a blank mask, refusing to meet my eyes. "Drink," she said, her voice toneless, devoid of inflection. "Long journey." As she leaned down, holding the bottle towards my lips, I exploded. Summoning every ounce of adrenaline-fueled strength, I swung my free hand, the crack of knuckles against her jaw echoing in the small space. She staggered back, eyes wide with disbelief. I didn't hesitate. I launched myself forward, a tangle of limbs and desperation, tackling her to the rough floor. We wrestled in grim silence, a primal struggle where any sound meant summoning the others. My terror lent me strength. My hands found her throat. I squeezed, pouring all my fear and fury into the pressure, until her struggles ceased. Her eyes rolled back, and she went limp beneath me. Trembling violently, I fumbled through her pockets, my fingers closing around the cool metal of a small knife. I sawed through my remaining bonds, the blade biting easily through the rope. Heart hammering against my ribs, I crept to the door, pressing my ear against the wood, listening. Silence stretched down the unseen hallway. The escape is a fractured nightmare in my memory, a frantic scramble through shadowed corridors, ducking into alcoves at imagined sounds, the terror of physical presence clinging to my back. Finally, a grimy window, barely large enough to squeeze through. Then, running through alien streets under a bruised dawn sky, ignoring the startled glances of early risers, running until the blessed sight of a police station offered sanctuary. The days that followed were a blur. Endless questions, sterile embassy offices, choked phone calls relaying the impossible to my family oceans away. They apprehended Maya and her stone-faced associate, Victor. The police informed me, matter-of-factly, that I wasn't the first. Just one of the lucky few who clawed their way back from the abyss. The knowledge offered no solace, only a colder confirmation of the darkness I had glimpsed. Boarding the plane home felt like shedding a skin, but leaving something essential behind in that suffocating room. My innate trust in the open faces of strangers, the naive belief in inherent human goodness, these things had been fractured beyond repair. The rope burns healed, fading to faint white lines. The internal scars remain, deeper, more permanent. I still travel, still chase the horizon, but a sentinel now stands perpetual guard within me, scanning every friendly smile for the flicker of calculation, the shadow of the predator. Because I learned, irrevocably, that the most lethal dangers often approach with outstretched hands and the sweet promise of adventure. Tuesday night bled into the deeper hours, finding me entombed in the subterranean archives of the old municipal registry. Down there, the air possessed a tangible weight, stagnant decades pressed into stillness. My assignment: sift through generations of forgotten files, boxes untouched, their contents surrendered to dust and bureaucratic oblivion. Call the chaff, my supervisor, Anya Sharma, had instructed, her voice already distant upstairs. Yet a reluctance stayed my hand. Discarding history, even the mundane sort, felt like a minor sacrilege without a closer look. That's how the shoebox surfaced. An ordinary vessel harboring extraordinary cargo. Cassette tapes. Initially, I imagined them keepsakes, sonic diaries of some long-departed clerk. Then, a label snagged my attention, stark against the aged plastic. March 14th, 2026 sound. A date yet unlived. The calendar firmly pinned us in 2025. The tape felt unnaturally heavy in my palm. A knot tightened in my stomach, chased by an unwelcome flush creeping up my neck. An error, surely. A misprint. A prank left to ripen in the dark. My mind scrambled for rational footing, but the tape drew me towards the desolate office nook at the basement's far end. There sat a cassette player, a relic caked in grime. My fingers, betraying a tremor I couldn't quell, fumbled with the deck. The door protested with a thin squeal as I slid the cassette home. Play. A hiss of static. A breath held in magnetic silence, then a voice. My voice. Unmistakably mine, yet dislocated. Spectral. I'm standing in the corner of my living room. It murmured, the tone eerily calm, trying to decide if I should answer the phone. The recording unfolded, detailing the prosaic. The specific artisanal coffee blend I'd only just discovered the previous week. The gnawing anxiety about an upcoming departmental presentation. It concluded with a casual mention of a minor power disruption anticipated at my apartment complex. Around 9 o'clock, the voice predicted the following evening. My mouth turned to parchment. A band constricted around my chest. Was I unraveling? My gaze darted around the cramped office, half expecting a hidden camera, a grinning colleague leaping from the shadows. Nothing. Just the oppressive silence, the humming player, and the impossible tape. I ejected it, turning it over and over, the future date mocking me. Just a similar voice, I reasoned desperately. A coincidence. Home offered no solace. The recorded words looped relentlessly in my head. Dinner was a blur, the television screen a flickering irrelevance against the rising tide of unease. That tape, its prediction. Time crawled towards 9 p.m., each minute punctuated by a glance at the clock. 9:03 p.m. The lights held steady. A nervous laugh escaped me, spooked by a dusty cassette. Then, precisely at 9:07 p.m., the apartment plunged into darkness. A brief 10-second void before the power surged back, illuminating my wide-eyed stare. My heart hammered against my ribs, sweat beaded on my forehead. Not a blackout, just a flicker, exactly as foretold. Shaken, I paced the confines of my living room, mind racing, grasping for logic, for coincidence, finding none solid enough to hold. The next morning, the archive basement felt different, charged with a sinister potential. Routine tasks blurred, my attention kept returning to the shoebox on the metal shelf. I yielded. The other cassettes beckoned. Dates stretched months, years into the future. Some bore no dates, only terse inscriptions. The meeting, the car, the leak. All penned in my own hand, a script I didn't recall writing. A tremor started deep in my chest, climbing into my throat. Lips dry, I selected the meeting. Again, the hiss, then my voice, unnervingly familiar. It spoke of an impending summons from Anya Sharma, head of archives. It detailed her attire, the exact time, the precise flavor of frustration I would feel upon being assigned a difficult new project. I walk out of that room. The recording concluded, knowing I can't escape this situation. The finality in my own voice sent shivers down my arms. A glance at the wall clock, nearly noon. Sharma had indeed requested a meeting for 1:20 p.m., ostensibly about quarterly planning. My throat tightened. A clammy sweat broke out anew. Ignore it, I commanded myself. See what unfolds. At 12:50 p.m., I ascended the stairs, a hollow feeling expanding in my chest, ears ringing faintly. The meeting commenced precisely on the hour. Sharma wore a slate gray blazer, just as the tape described. Restructuring, she announced, a more demanding role for me, a new project. My palms grew slick against the chair's worn arms. Every detail, every nuance mirrored the recording. Leaving her office, I felt precisely as predicted. Cornered, drained, trapped. Returning to the basement's gloom felt like descending into my own grave. Corridor lights flickered overhead, amplifying a sudden prickling sense of being observed. The heavy door groaned shut behind me, sealing me with the shoebox. Toss them. Burn them. The urge warred with a desperate need to understand. A cold knot formed in my stomach as I chose another tape, labeled simply, Work. My voice again, narrating the immediate future. A minor dispute with Elias Thorne from acquisitions over misfiled dockets. A scalded hand from the temperamental coffee machine. And then, something extraordinary. The discovery of a hidden passage in the basement. leading to an unknown storage sector. I would stumble, it said, on a loose floor tile, brace myself against the far wall, and it would yield, revealing an older, forgotten part of the archives. My breath hitched. A hidden corridor? Preposterous. The following day, while wrestling with brittle folders, Thorne appeared, irritation etched on his face. A box I'd processed, mislabeled, delaying his inventory. We exchanged sharp words, a small, unpleasant clash, yet perfectly aligning with the tape. Later, seeking caffeine, the break room machine spat boiling water onto my left hand. I cursed, running it under cold water, the tape's prophecy stinging worse than the burn. Focus dissolved. Anxiety hummed beneath my skin. That afternoon, ferrying a precarious stack of binders, my foot caught on an uneven tile. I lurched, binders threatening to spill. My hand shot out, palm slamming against the concrete wall for balance. A faint click. The section of wall shifted inwards by inches. My heart leapt into my throat. Hesitantly, I pushed again. Silent hinges pivoted, unveiling a passage choked with the scent of decay and stagnant air. Grabbing a nearby emergency flashlight, I pierced the darkness. Rows of skeletal shelving, decaying crates, mountains of bound ledgers slumbering in a chamber visibly older than the main basement. In a far corner, a small, battered desk. Beside it, a broken chair. And on the desk, another cassette player, different model, equally ancient, coated in dust. A frayed power cord snaked from its back. Beside it lay a scattering of unlabeled tapes, identical in brand to those in the shoebox. Adrenaline surged, leaving me lightheaded, breathless. What secrets resided here? Who had sat at this desk? Weakness flooded my legs. I retreated, pulling the hidden door closed, the cold metal trembling under my trembling hands. Back at my assigned workstation, I fought for composure. The tapes weren't coincidence. They were precognitive, narrated by me. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Rummaging through the shoebox, I counted them. 20 tapes in total. Labels varied. Dates, weeks, months, years away. Cryptic phrases. One tape bore today's date. Today. My head throbbed as I slotted it into the player I'd brought from the office nook. I braced myself. My voice tinny and strained. I'm standing in the basement. It's around 5 in the afternoon, too scared to open the next door. I keep checking the corridor to make sure I'm alone. I feel my heart pounding. I listen to the recording of myself describing these exact actions. I realize I can't avoid the next step. I hit pause. The wall clock showed 4:55 p.m. My chest vibrated. Play. I know I can't throw these tapes away. I'll try to figure out who made them or why they exist, but I'm afraid of what I'll discover next. Silence. The tape ended. Dry-mouthed, blood pulsing in my temples, I wrapped the shoebox of tapes and the player in discarded newsprint, stuffed them into my satchel. The corridor outside remained empty. I fled the building, hurrying up the concrete stairs into the fading light. The drive home was fraught, the satchel on the passenger seat radiating a palpable menace. My shoulders ached with tension, jaw clamped tight. Focus on the road, I told myself, but my mind endlessly replayed my own disembodied voice. Inside my apartment, doors locked, windows checked and rechecked, I placed a player on the kitchen table. Listened to them all. Destroy them. The impulses tore at me. To hear the future felt like sealing it, forfeiting any chance of deviation. Hands shaking, sweat trickling down my temples, I succumbed. I selected a tape labeled "Next Week." Crackle and static yielded to my voice, detailing a chance encounter at the supermarket with Marcus Chen, an old university acquaintance I hadn't seen in years. We would discuss, the tape specified, structural issues in old civic buildings, specifically the archive's foundations. Every predicted detail, down to a minor crack near my basement desk, unfolded on the tape. It ended. I realize these tapes are controlling me, but I can't stop listening. I snapped the player off, breathing shallowly. The compulsion was undeniable, a magnetic pull towards foreknowledge, however terrifying. Days bled into a week. The supermarket prediction materialized with chilling accuracy. Marcus, amidst the breakfast cereals, recognized me instantly. His casual inquiry about my job veered, unprompted, towards the structural integrity of old buildings. My heart hammered. The shopping cart handle felt slick in my sweating palms. Tape after tape proved infallible. Sleep fragmented into anxious vigils, punctuated by imagined whispers of my own voice. At work, the basement's familiar shadows now seemed to teem with unseen watchers. Telling someone felt impossible. Who would believe such a story? The tapes accumulated in my apartment, a growing testament to my captured future. My voice detailed conversations yet to happen, city events yet to occur, personal habits I'd yet to adopt, but soon found myself performing unconsciously. And so, I sit here now, chronicling this descent. Tapes remain, promising glimpses further down the timeline. The one marked 1 year from now lies heavy on the table, radiating a cold dread. Playing it feels like stepping off a cliff. Not playing it feels like closing my eyes during a fall. Part of me screams for answers, the origin, the mechanism. Another part whispers that listening further only tightens the chains. My heart pounds relentlessly. Tomorrow, I resolve I will return to that hidden room. Search for a clue, a name, anything to explain this impossible haunting by my own future self. The thought churns my stomach, yet avoidance feels equally futile. The tapes dictate the path. They have never been wrong. That first recording, my voice speaking of the future just hours before it arrived, the memory is a brand on my psyche. There seems no escape from this pattern, this loop. The cassette player sits to my right, the remaining tapes to my left. Sweat slicks my forehead. The windows are secure. The next tape is labeled "Tomorrow Night." Perhaps it holds a key, an answer, or perhaps just the next inevitable step on a path I no longer control. All I can do is press play, listen, and wait. My life irrevocably fractured, spooling out not by choice, but by cassette. The library's immense quiet pressed in, a physical weight beneath the sterile hum of the overhead lights. Outside, the campus slept, but here, within these walls of slumbering knowledge, the hour hand crept past 2, marking 2:17 a.m. on my watch face. My name is Elias. I haunt these late hours, a postgraduate specter trading wakefulness for tuition funds amidst the towering shelves. Usually, the graveyard shift offered a welcome solitude, a sanctuary for study. Tonight, however, the silence felt thin, stretched taut over something unseen. and a cold current snaked up my spine, whispering that I was observed. This space, typically my refuge, felt alien. A misplaced folio on a reading table, a solitary chair angled oddly away from its desk, negligible shifts in the vast order, yet accumulating into a dissonant chord within the library's usual harmony. Paranoia, I told myself, the bitter fruit of caffeine and exhaustion. But the feeling persisted, a low thrum beneath the surface of the quiet. Earlier, near the stroke of 1, the main doors had sighed open, admitting a figure. Night wanderers weren't uncommon, desperate undergraduates fueled by panic and energy drinks. This arrival, though, felt different. He was older, perhaps late 40s, his face a mask of sharp angles and sunken hollows, dominated by eyes that seemed to possess a disturbing gravity, pulling my own gaze into their flat, dark depths. "Anything I can help you locate?" I'd offered, the practiced cordiality feeling brittle on my tongue. A slow shake of his head, those unnerving eyes never unlocking from mine. "No, thank you. I know precisely what I seek." He'd turned then, melting into the shadowed canyons of the stacks. An hour had dissolved since, leaving no trace of his passage, yet the air felt charged, expectant. I pushed back my chair, the scrape echoing like a dropped stone in a well. Time for a patrol, ostensibly to collect stray volumes, but truly to map the geography of my unease, to prove the shadows empty. My own footfalls were intrusions in the sepulchral hush. Literature yielded nothing. Philosophy remained undisturbed. A measure of calm began to return, fragile as old parchment, just as I rounded the corner into history, and froze. There, framed at the aisle's far end, stood the man, perfectly immobile. An open book rested in his hands, unread. His gaze, however, was fixed entirely, unblinkingly, on me. A strangled pulse hammered against my ribs. I manufactured a nod, a rictus resembling a smile, then pivoted, walking, not running, never running, back towards the relative sanctuary of the circulation desk. My fingers trembled as they reached for the telephone receiver, poised to dial campus security. But the words died before they formed. "There's a man reading, and he frightens me?" Absurd. I replaced the handset, drawing a ragged breath, attempting to leash my galloping heart. An eccentric, surely. Harmless. Yet the unease clung, a viscid residue. The next hour bled away in a state of hypervigilance. My textbook remained open, its words blurring into meaningless symbols as I scanned the same sentence repeatedly, my attention snagged by every peripheral flicker, every sigh of the ventilation. Faint sounds drifted from the depths, the whisper-soft turn of a page, the ghost of a footstep. But the man himself remained unseen. By 3:30 a.m., the tension was unbearable. I had to know. Where was he? What was he doing? Standing abruptly, the chair legs screaming against the polished floor, I ventured back into the labyrinth. The history aisle gaped, empty. Confusion warred with fear. Had he simply left? I turned, meaning to sweep the adjacent sections, and a choked gasp escaped me. He was there, directly behind me, so close the scent of dust and decaying paper, sharp and cloying, filled my nostrils. "Apologies," I stammered, attempting to sidestep. He mirrored my movement, a fluid obstruction. "You seem perceptive," he murmured, his voice a low rasp, like stones grinding together. "Tell me, are you acquainted with inevitability?" My throat constricted. My mouth felt packed with dust. I should return to the desk," I managed. A smile touched his lips, transforming his face into something dreadful. "Ah, but I think not. You see, I've awaited someone of your particular disposition, one who embraces the quietude, the profound solitude, one who senses the latent power within these bindings." He advanced a step. I retreated, the unyielding spines of books pressing into my back. Trapped. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through me. "What is it you want?" The tremor in my voice shamed me. His smile widened, a disturbing glimpse of teeth that seemed unnaturally pointed, overly abundant. "To unveil something, a truth both wondrous and deeply terrifying. Will you accompany me?" Every nerve ending screamed, "Run, fight, flee." Yet I stood rooted, caught in a web of fear more potent than any I'd known. In that frozen moment, a sharp, insistent beeping sliced through the charged silence. My watch alarm, set for the 4 a.m. security walkthrough. The mundane sound shattered the spell. I ducked beneath the cage of his arm and bolted, abandoning all pretense of quiet. Behind me, his footsteps thudded, unnervingly swift. I burst from the stacks, sprinting for the circulation desk, for the telephone, the lifeline. Rounding the final bookcase, a fresh wave of horror washed over me. The desk was bare. The phone was gone. A hand clamped onto my arm, spinning me violently. His face loomed inches from mine, eyes blazing with a terrifying, manic delight. "No further distractions," he hissed, his breath cold. "Your true education commences now." Primal instinct surged. My knee snapped upward, connecting solidly. He buckled with a strangled grunt. Seizing the moment, I shoved with all my strength. He staggered back, colliding with the metal book cart, sending volumes cascading to the floor. I didn't hesitate. I ran for the emergency exit, praying the shrieking alarm it promised would summon rescue. The heavy bar yielded under my weight, and the night air, cool and damp, struck my face as the piercing wail of the alarm erupted, shattering the library's silence. The campus grounds were deserted, but across the quad, lights flickered on in dormitory windows. Help was coming. I risked a glance back. The library stood stark and silent against the dark sky, the only motion the frantic pulsing of the alarm strobe above the now open door. No pursuit emerged. Campus security materialized within minutes, their arrival swiftly followed by the uniformed presence of local police. A methodical search commenced, sweeping through every aisle, every shadowed corner. They found nothing. No sign of the gaunt man with the terrible smile. It was as though he'd dissolved into the very dust motes dancing in their flashlight beams. The ensuing days were a blur of repeated statements, official inquiries, security footage from that crucial period, corrupted, inexplicably blank. Without corroboration, my account hung in the air, the desperate testimony of a terrified student. whispers suggested hallucination, a mind frayed by academic pressure and sleeplessness. But the memory was branded onto me. The cold dread, the rasp of his voice, the scent of old paper and menace. The terror was irrefutably real. I never returned to the library stacks, not for work, not alone. The thought of those silent aisles, the weight of that particular quiet, remained unbearable. Yet the ordeal forged something new within me, a heightened awareness, a necessary caution. Self-defense classes followed. Late-night shifts became a thing of the past. Paradoxically, I found a sharper appreciation for the simple, profound texture of safety. Sometimes, in the deep stillness of the night, the image of the man surfaces, his obsidian eyes, his chilling invitation. What knowledge did he wish to impart? What awaited down the path I refused to take? In those moments, gratitude washes over me, for the fear that spurred me to action, for the instinct that clawed its way through paralysis. That night in the library became an inflection point. It revealed a resilience I hadn't known I possessed, proof that terror could be confronted, endured, survived. Years have passed. The library's profound silence will forever hold a different resonance for me, tinged with remembered fear. But so too will the quiet strength I discovered within myself. And ultimately, perhaps, that is a balanced exchange. I faced a living nightmare and emerged, not unscathed, but undeniably stronger. Whatever shadows may yet fall across my path, I know now that I can face them. The deepest fear has been met, and I remain. Midday sun hammered down, bleaching the sky, as Elias stepped from his car into the oppressive stillness surrounding Blackwood Manor. The heat clung to the back of his neck, a stark contrast to the shadowed porch where his guide awaited. Mr. Finch, the guide, offered a polite, almost rehearsed eagerness, gesturing towards the cavernous main hall and its promised artworks. Elias noted the manor's weary age, paint flaking like sunburnt skin around the doorframe, stone steps hollowed by forgotten feet. Crossing the threshold was like entering a sealed vault. The air, thick with the scent of decaying upholstery and persistent damp, pressed in on him. Time felt suspended here, caught in the dust motes dancing in stray shafts of light. Each footfall on the wide plank floors unleashed a groan from the ancient wood, the ensuing silence amplifying the profound emptiness of the corridors. The official tour meandered past walls weeping faded wallpaper, upon which hung portraits of individuals whose severe gazes followed Elias's progress. Mr. Finch recited names of artists and recounted provenances with practiced detachment. Elias tapped notes into his phone, a small anchor of modern order in the pervasive decay. On the second floor, their passage led them by a formidable door, thick, dark timber bound with heavy iron hinges, a tarnished but sturdy lock gleaming dully above the handle. Elias angled his head, attempting to pierce the gloom visible through a sliver of a gap beside the frame, but saw only impenetrable blackness. "And this room?" he inquired. Finch, never breaking stride, murmured, "That area is presently inaccessible." The curt dismissal snagged Elias's attention, planting a seed of insistent curiosity. Later, ensconced in a study that smelled of brittle paper and old leather, Elias discussed the collection's appraisal with the estate manager, Ms. Thorne. Her courtesy was impeccable, yet she firmly reiterated that certain wings of the manor remained off limits. Elias offered a compliant nod, a mask of indifference hiding his preoccupation with the sealed chamber upstairs. When Ms. Thorne proposed a guest room on the ground floor for the night, a convenience saving him the return journey, he accepted readily. It was an opportunity, not just for rest, but for exploration under the cloak of solitude. By 8, the last of the staff had departed, the heavy thud of the main entrance lock echoing through the halls. They'd left him a key to a discreet side door, an emergency exit he had no intention of using. His plans lay within. An almost painful silence descended, ringing in Elias's ears. He navigated the shadowed arteries of the house, the beam of his phone's flashlight cutting a nervous path ahead. Most lamps remained extinguished, a presumed economy measure that deepened the gloom. The air carried a musty, cloying scent, reminiscent of sodden cardboard left too long in the dark. His own footsteps became intrusive echoes. Details unseen during the day now emerged. Gouges scarring the baseboards, hairline fractures crazing the plaster ceilings, thick dust blanketing the higher ledges like gray snow. Reaching the second-floor landing, a palpable chill raised the hairs on his arms. The temperature had distinctly dropped. He approached the forbidden door, his pulse a frantic drum against his ribs. It felt less like trespassing, more like accepting a dare whispered by the house itself. He tried the handle again, locked, solid. Standing there, mind racing, he recalled spotting a cluster of antiquated keys hanging forgotten in the kitchen. Perhaps. Descending, he retrieved the heavy iron ring from its hook near the pantry and returned, the keys clanking softly like discordant chimes. One by one, he tested them in the stubborn lock. Each refused purchase. Defeated but not deterred, unwilling to cause actual damage, he remembered the frailties of old mechanisms. From his bag, he withdrew a small pocket knife. With tentative, probing motions, he manipulated the lock's innards, feeling the subtle resistance of pins. His palms grew slick. He wiped them absently on his trousers. Then, a faint but distinct click. He turned the handle. With a low, protesting groan from hinges long undisturbed, the heavy door swung inward. He swept the flashlight beam into the space beyond. Emptiness greeted him. Bare walls, save for spectral discolorations mottling the plaster. He directed the light onto these marks, handprints, faded, overlapping, dozens upon dozens, reaching high towards the unseen ceiling joists and clustering low near the floorboards. Elias stepped deeper into the room, the air growing colder still, his breath misting slightly. He ran his free hand across the nearest patch. Beneath his fingertips, the plaster held shallow, distinct ridges, impressions left, seemingly, when the wall itself was still yielding. No furniture, no remnants of decoration, only dust motes swirling in his light and the silent testament of those countless hands. He stood motionless, absorbing the profound quiet, aware only of the rasp of his own breathing. Suddenly, a peculiar pressure bloomed in his chest, a dull ache pressing outward against his sternum. He drew a deeper breath, attempting to dispel it, but the sensation persisted, tightening. His flashlight beam quivered, betraying the tremor in his hands. He rubbed his chest, a knot of anxiety forming. Then a sound began, a low, rhythmic thudding. It pulsed in time with the accelerating beat of his own heart. A faint ringing started in his ears, and he felt sweat prickle his forehead. He swung the light across the walls, searching for a source, but nothing moved. The sound seemed to emanate from the very structure around him, the walls themselves vibrating in uncanny sympathy with his pulse. Drawn by a morbid compulsion, Elias moved towards the room's center. The pressure intensified, constricting his breathing. His throat felt tight. He swallowed against a rising dryness. The thumping grew louder, more insistent. He glanced back. The door remained ajar, a portal to the less oppressive hallway, yet the atmosphere within the room felt viscous, heavy. An instinct screamed retreat, but curiosity held him fast. He raised his phone, snapping pictures of the hand-marked walls, needing tangible evidence of this strangeness. The camera flash momentarily bleached the room, making the walls pulse with an unnatural luminescence. With each shot, a wave of cold radiated up his arms, gooseflesh prickling his skin. The rhythmic banging continued, perfectly synchronized with his now racing heart, the tempo increasing to a frantic tattoo. He scanned every corner again, nothing but dust and aged timber. His gaze fixed on one particular handprint near the wall's center. It was larger than the others, its outline marginally darker, as if stained by something more persistent. Hesitantly, he reached out, placing his own hand over the shape. It dwarfed his fingers. The instant his skin met the cold plaster, an electric jolt shot up his arm, making his fingertips tingle painfully. The vise around his chest clamped tighter. He snatched his hand back, stumbling a step away. His breathing grew shallow, ragged, his lungs starved for air. The pounding surged, deafening now, tipping him towards panic. Wiping sweat from his brow, he fought for control, his mind a whirlwind. Leave, stay, understand. His phone's battery indicator glowed at half charge. Light enough. He cast the beam upwards. Old, dark ceiling beams, nothing more. Downwards, dust, and his own footprints starkly imprinted, the only recent sign of life. Yet, all the while, those silent handprints seemed to watch, eyeless but aware. He looked towards the open doorway, the dark hallway beyond offering a fragile promise of normalcy. Perhaps stepping out, just for a moment. His heart hammered, but he forced slow, deliberate breaths. He walked towards the threshold. The very second his foot crossed from the room into the hall, the intensity of the pounding diminished, receding to a duller, more distant throb. The pressure in his chest eased, releasing its grip. He stood in the corridor, gulping the comparatively lighter air, letting the relative cool soothe him. Silence reigned here, broken only by the faint, subterranean hum of the manor's ancient systems. His phone displayed the time, just past midnight. A powerful urge surged. Flee to the guest room, lock the door, erase this. But a colder, more rational part of him whispered, "Go back. See if it happens again." Curiosity, his persistent flaw, tugged him towards the abyss he'd just escaped. Tentatively, he stepped back across the threshold. Instantly, the thumping resumed its intimate connection with his heartbeat. His pulse leaped, and the pounding matched its frantic pace. Gooseflesh erupted along his arms. He concentrated fiercely on maintaining steady breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth, determined to observe. Did the handprints alter? He panned the light methodically across each wall. They appeared unchanged, faint, numerous, static, Yet, the large central print. Did it subtly pulse, flicker at the edge of his vision? He moved closer, scrutinizing the surface, wondering if his flashlight or his stressed eyes were deceiving him. The plaster looked inert, save for that unsettling imprint. His vision momentarily blurred. He blinked, shaking his head slightly. The weight settled on his chest again, heavy and suffocating. Enough. His gut screamed a final warning, backing away slowly, keeping the light fixed on the wall until he reached the doorway. He stepped fully into the hall, grasped the handle, and pulled the heavy door shut. The lock mechanism clicked firmly into place. Relief washed over him, immediate and profound, like a painfully taut wire snapping inside him. He lingered in the hallway, listening intently. Silence. Only the occasional sigh and creak of the old house settling around him. Leaning against the opposite wall, he focused on slowing his breathing. The air here felt blessedly thin. His heart still raced but no longer pounded with that terrifying external echo. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His legs felt unsteady. He caught his reflection in a dust-filmed mirror nearby. Wide, haunted eyes stared back from a pale face. Composure was a distant memory. Turning off the flashlight, he descended the stairs, letting the darkness envelop him as his eyes adjusted. He passed through the main hall. The portraits watched from their shadowed frames, their presence felt rather than seen. He didn't stop until he reached the relative sanctuary of his assigned room. Inside, he bolted the door and switched on a dim bedside lamp. Sitting on the edge of the mattress, he could still feel the residual tremor of his rapid heartbeat, though the crushing pressure was gone. His shirt clung damply to his skin. The silence now felt heavy, charged, but blessedly free of the rhythmic intrusion. He kicked off his shoes and lay back, staring blankly at the ceiling, trying to process the handprints, the pressure, the impossible synchronization. Exhaustion warred with adrenaline. He picked up his phone, battery now hovering near 40%. He scrolled through the photos taken in the sealed room. Each image depicted a stark, vacant space, the walls marred by dark, nebulous stains. The handprints were visible, clearer in some shots, ethereal in others. Zooming in on one, he saw the blurred edges, as if impressed into yielding plaster long ago. The photos offered no explanation, no hint of movement, nothing overtly supernatural. Yet the memory of the sensations, the constriction, the pounding mirroring his own frantic pulse, was undeniable. He switched off the phone and courted sleep. It was a fitful hour. Closing his eyes summoned visions of those countless hands closing in. The remembered pressure made him shiver despite the room's mild temperature. He anchored himself to the present. The feel of the mattress, the rhythm of his own, now calmer, breathing, the distant drone of the manor's heating. Eventually, the adrenaline subsided, allowing exhaustion to claim him. He awoke to weak light filtering through the heavy curtains, his back aching from a night spent coiled in tension. His mouth felt like sandpaper. Stumbling to the small ensuite bathroom, he splashed cold water on his face and drank deeply from the tap. A residual disquiet lingered. The thought of ascending to the second floor again sent a wave of nausea through him. Yet, he needed confirmation that the night hadn't been some elaborate, stress-induced hallucination. Dressed, phone in hand, he eased open the guest room door. The ground floor corridor lay silent, seemingly inert in the morning light. No staff had yet arrived. He climbed the main staircase, each step measured. The second-floor landing appeared just as it had, empty, aged, steeped in shadow despite the daylight filtering from distant windows. He walked towards the dark wooden door. The lock remained firmly in place. Hesitantly, he reached out, testing the handle. Still locked. Relief warred with a prickle of remembered fear, the phantom sensation of the lock yielding beneath his makeshift tool. He stood there for a long moment, his heart rate quickening reflexively, but the hallway remained stubbornly ordinary. No encroaching cold, no spectral sounds. Best not to tempt fate, he decided. Turning away, he descended, intent on compiling his appraisal swiftly and departing this unsettling place. As he worked, thoughts of the room intruded relentlessly. The memory of the pounding, perfectly timed to his terror, still tightened his stomach. He had no desire to test that lock again. Some doors, he told himself, were best left closed. Around 9, Ms. Thorne arrived, her professional composure intact. They exchanged brief pleasantries. Had he slept well? A comfortable lie served as his reply. She made no mention of the sealed room. Neither did he. He expedited his final assessment, gathered his notes, offered polite farewells, and walked out into the clear morning. The warmth of the sun on his skin felt like absolution. Each step away from Blackwood Manor lessened the knot in his chest. He hasn't returned. The photos remain on his phone, artifacts of an encounter he struggles to fully comprehend. He looks at them occasionally, seeing only a vacant room and faint marks on plaster walls. But the visceral memory, the pressure constricting his breath, the parched throat, the chilling synchronicity of the pounding with his own terrified heart, persists. That is reason enough to remain distant. What resides behind that door now, or what resided there then, remains an unanswered question, one Elias has no intention of ever pursuing again.